Welcome back, everyone. Imagine being in a religion so bad that you spend your days denying your own sources so that you can justify staying in your religion. One of the favorite pastimes of Muslim apologists today is finding out ways to call their own sources, like the Hadith, unreliable so that they don't have to deal with them anymore. But what's the problem with the Hadith anyway? It's there we find this great story about Muhammad getting bewitched by a hairbrush, and a hilarious quip about what makes a child resemble a parent. At least I think that was meant to be a joke. There's also something about why you should dunk flies in your drink. Don't knock it until you've tried it. And there's also a much darker side, as the Hadith tell us how effective killing is at stopping critics of Muhammad. Apparently some children witnessed the brutal stabbing of this woman. By the way, it seems in the modern period that Allah has struggled to come up with a plan B for combating criticism of Muhammad, since it's rampant on the internet and resulting in an avalanche of apostasy. But as always, as I've said, the best criticism of Muhammad comes right from the Hadith, like the one about Muhammad's severe forgetfulness problem. This is ironic since the early Muslims were supposed to be magnificent memorizers. Speaking of that, I guess we should ignore the fact that Muhammad drew a parallel between his forgetfulness and the forgetfulness of his companions, the ones who were supposed to memorize the Quran. More problems with the Hadith could not possibly include Muhammad's rock-bottom moral standards, where he had sex with slaves, combined babysitting with sexual intercourse, said horrible things about women, did not defend women against domestic abuse, and had this weird thing about trying to get women to breastfeed adult men. Along with his rock-bottom moral standards, Muhammad also had rock-bottom sanitation. But the inner hidden beauty of these hadith is that I could take all of these examples and present them to you 20 different ways and make it entertain you each time while still exposing some perpetual problems with the religion of Islam. Let me illustrate with a couple of brief examples. I could say Muhammad had this bizarre theory that a fly wing contained the cure for a disease, which makes me wonder if that could cure the diseases he must have had after having sex with so many women. Or to use another example, I could say I should criticize the treatment of the Muslim women. Nobody suffers worse than they do. However, I should have considered other unbelieving women like the ones who got stabbed to death for insulting Muhammad. Touché. Let's do just one more example. I could say Muhammad cautioned his followers about the lack of sense women have. Of course, this is coming from someone who thought that women breastfeeding adult men would eliminate sexual tension, and that babies resemble the parent who orgasmed first. So consider the source. You want another one, don't you? I feel like we should just stop now and get on with the video. However, I did just get the 5,000th email about yet another person being brutally tortured and killed for criticizing Muhammad. So let's do one more. What's one good thing about Muhammad being bewitched? Give up? We know that one symptom of Muhammad's bewitchment was that he thought he was having sex with his wives when he wasn't. We also know that it takes sex with a lot of women to prompt Muhammad to finally take a bath. So perhaps, and this is just pure speculation, when Muhammad was bewitched, thinking he was having crazy amounts of intercourse, maybe, just maybe, for the sake of everyone standing downwind of him, that filthy prophet took a celebratory, post-imaginary coitus bath. Imagine the confusion of his companions and suspicion of his wives. Why is he bathing? He hasn't been having sex, has he? It wasn't with me, one wife would say. Was it with you or you or you or you? There's so many. Maybe it was with the slave girl again. But which one? Aren't the Hadith wonderful? With just a small number of them and a little bit of creativity, I could keep you entertained and horrified for a very long time. But of course, what's entertaining for some is embarrassing for others. Hence, the emergence of the Hadith rejectors. In his book, A Concise Guide to the Life of Muhammad, Dr. Ayman Ibrahim documents the growing trend of Muslims forsaking their treasured traditions. By the way, I recently recommended this book to you. If you haven't bought it yet, you are not following the Sunnah of Islam Critiqued. So now the rest of us will wait for you as you go to the description box, click on the link, and buy the book for yourself. Great job. You'll thank me later. Dr. Ibrahim grew up in a Muslim-majority country, is a native Arabic speaker, and would know this from experience. For centuries, Sunni Muslims did not dare to question the Hadiths, especially those compiled by Bukhari. In fact, there is a popular saying in the Arab world, "Are you faulting Bukhari?" For many Muslims today, the answer to this question is yes. But why? Here's the irony. Muslims began to read the Hadiths for themselves. Many questions arose due to the unrealistic nature of some Hadiths or the unfavorable way they presented both Islam and Muhammad. This, among other factors, resulted in a growing number of Hadith rejectors. Even in the heartland of Islam, the Middle East and North Africa, the news of Hadith rejectors is now a growing trend. When Muslims read their own sources, they are increasingly rejecting them. And as we know, in many cases, they're eventually choosing to reject their religion altogether. This is what happens when Muslims encounter Muslim sources. Alternatively, some try to hold on to their traditions, rejecting only those that are most embarrassing or radically reinterpreting them to save their prophet and his God, to the extent that there's a difference from further embarrassment. Professor Ibrahim has a lot more information about the Hadith rejectors in his book. I'll leave that reading to you, except for one thing. On page 164 of his book, there's a footnote with some references that I didn't know were translated into English. When I saw the footnote, I circled it because I knew I had to do a video on at least one of them. That's why I wrote video. I'm really cryptic like that. Imagine a book on medicine compiled from the Hadith of the Prophet Muhammad translated into English. Who says Christmas only comes once a year? In the description box, you'll find a link to download one of those masterpieces. I'm just going to take you on a brief tour here through some random fun facts. The page numbers I cite are from the PDF itself, so you'll easily be able to find these references. First of all, let's learn how to be smart. Muslim has transmitted the Hadith that the Prophet, blah, 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 was very fond of dried pumpkin. He also reported that he, blah, 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 once said, "Let them have pumpkins, for they stimulate the intellect and the brain." Either Muhammad is completely wrong, or he didn't eat nearly enough pumpkin. Now, as you might expect, there's a lot of concern for sexual potency in this magnificent book of medicine. It's almost as if Muhammad knew in advance that his religion would only spread by making babies and indoctrinating them. So here's one tip for you. Wiping the dish clean helps the digestion and increases sexual desires. And in case that isn't enough, this book also tells us that lemons, dove meat, cress seeds, henna, and chickpeas also increase sexual desire and energy. Here's another fun fact. The Prophet, blah, 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 said, "Cover over your containers and stop up the mouths of your water bottles, for truly there is a night in the year in which a pestilence comes down and does not settle on any uncovered container without falling into it. There is one night a year when a pestilence comes down and goes into open containers." Indeed, all physicians are in agreement with this command of the Prophet. I have no doubt that all Muslim traditionalist physicians who used Bukhari's Book of Medicine as a textbook agree with this. This is probably a good time to pause and take a little break while a few more Muslims leave Islam. Now let's talk about paralysis and freckles. Whoever eats onions for 40 days will get freckles on his face. There is no one to blame but yourself if this happens. Whoever of you has an average build and eats salt will be afflicted with leukoderma and scabies. And for this, blame no one but yourself. Whoever eats fish and eggs together will become paralyzed. And for this, blame no one but yourself. Whoever has a wet dream and does not wash before having sexual intercourse will produce an idiot or an epileptic. I guess now we know what Muhammad's mom did. And for this, blame no one but Muhammad's mom. Whoever eats until he is full and then gets into a hot bath will become paralyzed. This is so stupid. Okay, let's just move on to the next one. I'll summarize it for you. This is the wisdom of Imam Malik, commenting on a hadith from you-know-who. The theory is that a woman cannot nurse while pregnant because the baby in the womb takes the nutrients and the mother's milk becomes corrupted. Let's pause to fact-check the claim that a pregnant woman should not nurse. False, 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 false. Wow, I didn't see that coming. So with that background, that is why the Prophet, blah, 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 said, do not kill your children in secrecy, for breastfeeding while pregnant throws down the child. In other words, the effects of the corrupted nourishment will stay with the man, and later on, if he's challenged to a duel, he'll lose. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the Book of Medicine. One of them, anyway, featuring the Hadith of the Prophet Muhammad. There's no question that there are Hadith rejectors. We've seen some reasons why, and no question that their numbers are growing. My only question is, if you are a Muslim and you made it this far in the video, are you one of them? If not, why? Let me know in the comments section below. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.